The diesel smell hit me first, cold metal and old oil in the unheated shop. Dawn light came gray through the frost-glazed window. My coffee had gone cold on the workbench hours ago, but I hadn't touched it since I opened the bank statement. Crystal's announcement at the church potluck yesterday still rang in my ears. The energy in Sedona is just transformative, staying 2 more weeks with the girls. The congregation had clapped. I'd forced a smile, nodded like a good husband. Now I stared at the spa package charge. Derek Landis listed as guest, couples massage, champagne upgrade, honeymoon suite. My hand shook as I circled his name in red pen, not from anger, not yet, just the simple arithmetic of betrayal. I didn't call her. I called my sister instead. "Marlene," I said when she picked up, "I need you to check something at the county clerk's office." Her voice went quiet. "Vern, when did you apply for a home equity loan?" 3 days earlier, the church fellowship hall had smelled like green bean casserole and burnt coffee. Crystal stood by the dessert table in her new yoga pants, the expensive kind, holding court with the other women. "So we've decided to extend the retreat," she said, loud enough that half the room could hear. 2 more weeks. The instructors there are just amazing." Pastor Eugene smiled. "Wonderful that you're investing in your spiritual wellness, Crystal." She hugged me in front of everyone. Her perfume smelled different. Not the drugstore lilac she'd worn for 38 years, something expensive, musky, the kind that comes in a box. "You don't mind, do you, honey?" Her eyes didn't quite meet mine. "Of course not," I said. Deb, the diner waitress, refilled the coffee urn nearby. She glanced at me, then away. Too quick. I watched Crystal laugh with the women's Bible study group, watched her touch Joanne's arm, lean in close like they were sharing secrets. These were supposed to be her traveling companions, Joanne, Ruth, and Martha. The church ladies. Something in my chest tightened. Not quite suspicion. Not yet. Just a question mark I couldn't shake. When we got home that night, I asked which resort they were staying at. "The Sanctuary," she said, not looking up from her phone. "I told you that already." She hadn't. The kitchen was cold Monday night, wood stove crackling, but the heat didn't seem to reach the table where I sat with the bank statement spread out in front of me. Derek Landis. The name meant nothing at first, just another line item in our joint account. Then I saw the merchant description, Sedona Sunset Spa, couples romance package. I opened my laptop, the old one that took 3 minutes to boot up, and searched the resort website. The romance package included champagne, roses, and a king suite with a fireplace. Designed for 2. My hands didn't shake anymore. They just stopped working for a second, hovering over the keyboard. I called Marlene. She answered on the second ring. "It's late," she said. "What's wrong?" "Crystal's in Sedona." "I know," she told everyone at church. "She's not with the church ladies." Silence on the other end. Then, "How do you know?" Bank statement. Couples package charged to our account. Man named Derek Landis. More silence. I heard papers rustling. Marlene had been county clerk for 30 years before she retired. She still kept files on everything. "Vern," she said slowly, "when did you apply for a home equity loan?" The wood stove popped, a log shifting. "I didn't." "Well, someone did. I've got mail here at the office addressed to you. Legal notices. 3 of them. I was going to drop them by tomorrow, but..." She paused. "You need to come to the clerk's office first thing. And Vern, don't tell Crystal." I hung up, stared at Derek Landis's name on the statement. Outside, wind rattled the tin roof of the shop, the sound I'd heard my whole life, the sound my father heard before me. I walked to the workshop, turned on the space heater, opened my father's tool chest, the big red Craftsman he'd bought in 1952. Every Sunday morning since he died, I'd come out here, clean each tool, oil the moving parts, my ritual, my way of keeping him close. Tonight I photographed each tool with my phone, documented every drawer, every socket, every wrench. If Crystal was lying about Sedona, what else was she lying about? The tool chest was full, all 23 pieces accounted for. I locked it and hid the key in Dad's old tobacco tin. Marlene's question echoed, "When did you apply for a home equity loan?" The county clerk's office smelled like old paper and floor wax. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Marlene sat behind the counter with 3 manila envelopes lined up in front of her like evidence at a trial. "Morning, Vern." She didn't smile. A younger clerk, Sandra, I think her name was, glanced up from her computer, then went back to typing. The click of her keyboard was the only sound besides the furnace blowing stale heat through the vents. Marlene pushed the envelopes toward me. These came in December and January, all addressed to you, legal notices from First National. I opened the first one. My hands were steady now, past shaking, into some colder place. Notice of home equity loan application. $120,000, December 15th, 3 weeks before Crystal announced her Sedona trip. I never applied for this. I know. Marlene pulled out another folder, this one from her personal files, not the county's. I pulled the loan documents this morning, had to call in a favor from Janet at the bank. The signature card is dated December 15th, notarized by Ellen Pritchard. She slid a photocopy across the counter. My name, Vernon Holloway, in handwriting that looked almost right. Almost. The loops were too big. The Y crossed wrong, small things you wouldn't notice unless you knew what to look for. That's not my signature. Sandra stopped typing. The silence felt loud. Marlene pulled out a document from my father's estate, something I'd signed last year when we updated the property deed. She laid it next to the loan application. The difference was obvious. Whoever forged my signature had practiced, but not enough. This is forgery, Marlene said quietly, which means it's fraud. The furnace kicked off. In the new silence, I could hear my own breathing. Where's the money? Transferred to a joint account at Community Bank, opened December 28th. She slid another paper toward me. You're listed as co-owner, but I'm betting you never stepped foot in that branch. I hadn't. The bank manager's office was too warm. Rick Henderson sat behind his desk with a thin smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. He'd been manager here for 5 years. We'd never had problems before. Holloway, I understand your concern, but the loan was properly executed. Notarized signature, income, verification, property appraisal, everything in order. Except, I didn't sign it. He shifted in his chair, leather creaking. The notary confirmed your identity. Ellen Pritchard confirmed someone's identity, not mine. I've never met Ellen Pritchard. Marlene sat beside me, quiet. She'd insisted on coming. Witness, she'd said, in case this goes sideways. Rick pulled up something on his computer. The screen reflected in his glasses. The loan funded on December 28th. Wire transfer to Community Bank, account ending in 4739. You're listed as joint owner. I didn't open that account. Mr. Holloway, show me the signature card from Community Bank. He made a phone call, waited. The office smelled like coffee and the faint cologne he probably thought made him seem successful. Outside his window, dirty snow covered the parking lot. January thaw hadn't reached here yet. 10 minutes later, he hung up and turned his monitor toward me. The Community Bank signature card showed my name in the same wrong handwriting, dated December 27th, 1 day before the loan funded. That's not my signature either. Rick's smile disappeared. He picked up his phone again. Let me get our fraud department on the line. 20 minutes of hold music later, a woman's voice explained the process. Investigation period, police report requirements, provisional credit timelines. Words that meant nothing except delay. How long? I asked. 60 to 90 days for the investigation, but Mr. Holloway, you're still responsible for the loan payments during... The loan is fraudulent. We understand your position, but until the investigation concludes, the loan remains active. First payment is due February 15th. That's... She paused. 18 days from now? Rick slid a paper across his desk. Foreclosure notice. If payment isn't received within 60 days of the due date, we're required to begin foreclosure proceedings. Given the amount, $120,000 against a property valued at $340,000, we'd have no choice but to move forward. The radiator clanked. Hot water through old pipes. Marlene's hand touched my arm. Vern, I read the notice. 60 days. My father's farm, 81 years in the family, reduced to a deadline. I need to know where the money went, I said. Rick typed, waited. Withdrawn in cash increments over 10 days. Largest withdrawal was $40,000 on January 4th. Last withdrawal was January 12th. Account balance is currently $247. January 12th, 2 days before Crystal announced her extended Sedona trip. I stood. The chair scraped against the tile. Mr. Holloway, we'll work with you on this, but you need to file a police report today. And you need to make that February payment. Outside, the wind cut through my jacket. Marlene walked beside me to the truck, her boots crunching on frozen gravel. She planned this, I said. Before Sedona, before the announcement, she forged my name, stole $120,000, and then got on a plane. Marlene opened her car door. "You have 60 days, Vern, or we lose the farm." Hal's feed store smelled like sawdust and seed grain. The bell over the door jangled when I walked in. Tuesday afternoon, slow time. Just Hal behind the counter and old Tom Brewster browsing fence staples he probably didn't need. "Vern?" Hal looked up from his receipt book. "Coffee's on." I poured a cup from the pot on the hot plate. Burnt, like always. Tom nodded at me and shuffled toward the door, bags of staples under his arm. The bell jangled again. Now it was just us. Hal wiped down the counter. His hands were thick, scarred from 40 years of farm work before he bought this place. We'd known each other since grade school, Vietnam together, first marriages, divorces, second chances. The kind of friend who didn't need explanations. "You look like hell," he said. "Feel worse." I told him everything. The bank statement, Derek Landis, the forged loan, the 60-day deadline. My voice stayed level. Just facts. But halfway through, my hands started shaking again, so I set down the coffee cup. Hal listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. The store's heater clicked on. Warm air smelled like dust burning off the coils. "How long you think this has been going on?" he asked. "Don't know. I saw her car at the Riverside condos. Twice. January 3rd and January 8th. Parked outside Unit 217. He said it flat, like reporting the weather. Didn't think much of it first time. Second time, I figured maybe I should tell you. Then I figured maybe I was wrong, seeing things that weren't there. Unit 217. I filed that away. You weren't wrong. Hal pulled out his checkbook. "How much you need?" "What?" "For the payment. February 15th. "How much?" "Hal, I can't." "Your daddy helped build the first grain silo in this county. We're not letting his land go to some yoga instructor and a forged signature." He wrote out a check. $20,000. Slid it across the counter. I stared at it. "I can't take this." "You're not taking it. You're borrowing it. Pay me back when you get the farm sorted." He pushed the check closer. "No interest, no timeline, just take it." The heater shut off. In the silence, I could hear my own breathing. "She travels a lot for church stuff," Hal said. "Always some conference, some retreat. I remember thinking that last summer. How much traveling does one church secretary do?" He shook his head. "Should have said something sooner." I folded the check, put it in my wallet. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. You still got to prove fraud and get your farm back." He refilled my coffee cup. "And Vern, change your locks. Today." Sunday morning, the workshop was cold enough to see my breath. 4 a.m. The time I always did this. The time Dad had done it before me. I opened the tool chest. Every piece still there. Socket set, torque wrenches, the big channel locks with Dad's initials scratched in the handle. I pulled out each tool, wiped it down with oil, checked for rust. The ritual had a rhythm. Clean, inspect, oil, return. No thinking, just motion. My hands remembered even when my mind was elsewhere. This morning, I photographed everything again. 23 tools, close-ups of serial numbers, manufacturer marks, the spots where metal had worn smooth from decades of use. I uploaded the photos to Marlene's cloud storage, something she'd set up for me after Dad died, for estate documents. "Just in case," I said to the empty workshop. The coffee maker gurgled in the corner. I'd bought a cheap one to keep out here so I didn't have to go back to the house during my Sunday mornings, the house where Crystal's reading glasses still sat on the side table, where her coffee mug, the one that said "Blessed," still hung on the third hook. I poured coffee into my stained thermos, black, no sugar, the way Dad drank it. On the workbench, I'd started a file box. Marlene's idea. Everything documented, organized, dated. Bank statements, loan documents, signature comparisons, photos of the tool chest. Hal's check, deposited but not yet cashed, keeping it as evidence of the fraud's impact. The file box was gray steel, fireproof. I locked it with a key that I dropped into Dad's tobacco tin, the one he'd carried in his shirt pocket for 40 years. It still smelled like cherry blend, faint, but there. I set the tin on the highest shelf, behind a row of old paint cans. If Crystal wanted a war, she'd find I knew how to dig in, how to prepare. 60 days wasn't much, but it was enough if I didn't waste time on anger. Anger was noise, evidence was ammunition. Outside, the sky was starting to lighten, gray dawn over frozen fields, February in Indiana, the dead time between winter and anything resembling hope. My phone buzzed. Text from Marlene. "Janet at the bank got me Crystal's account records. You need to see this." "Come by at noon." I texted back. Okay. The workshop smelled like oil and old coffee and cold metal. Smells that meant work, meant purpose. I hung Dad's big crescent wrench back in its place, the one he'd used to build half the outbuildings on this property. 81 years, that's how long this land had been in the family. My grandfather bought it in 1944, came back from the Pacific, and sunk every dollar into these 80 acres. Dad inherited it in 1971. I got it in 2003. Crystal wasn't taking it with a forged signature and a yoga instructor. I locked the workshop door. The sun was up now, pale light on dirty snow. 60 days. I could work with 60 days. I called Billy Ray on Tuesday night. He answered on the fourth ring, voice distracted. TV noise in the background. Dad, what's up? Need to talk to you about something? Can it wait? I'm watching the game. It's about your mother. The TV volume dropped. What about her? I told him. Not everything. Didn't mention the tools yet, or Hal's loan, but enough. The forged equity loan, the bank's 60-day deadline, Derek Landis, and the spa receipts. My voice stayed level, just facts. Silence on the other end, long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Dad, are you sure about this? I've got the bank documents, signature analysis. Your Aunt Marlene pulled the county records. Mom already told me you'd say something like this. My hand tightened on the phone. What? She called last week. Said you've been acting paranoid, accusing her of things. She said you've been going through her stuff, checking her phone, getting angry when she wants to spend time with friends. He paused. She said she's scared of you. The kitchen was cold. I'd let the wood stove die down hours ago. Billy Ray, I have proof. Forged signatures, fraudulent loan applications. The bank confirmed. Mom says you're controlling, that you've always been like this, but it's gotten worse since you retired. She says you won't let her have her own life. I never applied for that loan. The handwriting isn't mine. Or maybe you did apply, and now you're trying to blame her because you're embarrassed about the money. His voice had an edge now. Not quite anger, something worse, pity. Dad, have you talked to anyone? Like a doctor? Mom mentioned you've been forgetting things. My chest went tight. I'm not forgetting anything. She loves you. She's worried about you. And honestly, so am I. This whole thing sounds... He trailed off. Sounds what? Paranoid. Like you're inventing problems because you can't handle her having friends, having a life outside the farm. The refrigerator hummed. The same refrigerator we'd bought when Billy Ray was 12, 29 years ago. She's having an affair, I said, with a man named Derek Landis, and she forged my signature to steal $120,000 from our farm. Jesus, Dad. Listen to yourself. Come to the house. Look at the documents. Talk to your Aunt Marlene. I can't. I believe Mom, and I think you need help. He took a breath. I'm not taking sides here. But if you keep making these accusations, if you keep harassing her while she's trying to have some space to think, I can't be part of that. Billy Ray, I gotta go. Game's back on. The line went dead. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The wood stove ticked as it cooled. Outside, wind moved through bare branches. My son was 41 years old enough to know better, old enough to see through lies. But he'd chosen her version, chosen it without even looking at the evidence. My phone was still in my hand. I wanted to call back, to make him understand. But what was the point? She'd gotten there first. Planted her story before I even knew there was a story to tell. I set the phone down, stared at the dark screen. 41 years of being his father. And he thought I was crazy. Sunday morning, the church parking lot was half full. Usual crowd. I parked in my regular spot, third row near the oak tree. Habit from 38 years of Sundays. Inside the fellowship hall, the smell of coffee and donuts. Pre-service gathering. People stood in clusters, talking, laughing. I poured coffee into a styrofoam cup. Pastor Eugene saw me from across the room. He didn't wave, just watched. Then he started walking toward me, and something in his expression made my stomach drop. Vern. He stopped close, voice low. Can we talk? In my office? Service starts in 10 minutes. This can't wait. His office smelled like old books and lemon furniture polish. He closed the door, gestured to the chair across from his desk. I didn't sit. What's this about? Eugene folded his hands. Pastor posture. The kind he used for difficult conversations, divorces, bankruptcies, deaths. I had a long conversation with Crystal yesterday. She's very concerned about you. Where is she? Still in Sedona? She's staying with a friend. She says she doesn't feel safe coming home right now. The radiator hissed. Old building, old heating system. The church had been here since 1887. Did she mention the $120,000 she stole from our farm? Eugene's face tightened. Brother Vern, she told me you'd say things like this. She said you've become fixated on conspiracy theories, that you're going through her personal belongings, making wild accusations. They're not wild. I have bank documents. She says you've been under a lot of stress since retiring, that the isolation on the farm has been hard on you. He leaned forward. Have you considered your role in this? In pushing her away? My role? Marriage is a partnership. When one person becomes controlling, suspicious, unwilling to let the other have independence, he spread his hands. Sometimes we create the very problems we fear. My coffee had gone cold. I set it on his desk. She forged my signature on a home equity loan. That's not a marriage problem. That's fraud. That's a serious accusation. Have you filed a police report? Not yet. Then maybe you should think about why you haven't. Maybe deep down, you know these accusations aren't true. Maybe you're lashing out because you're hurt that Crystal needs space from you. The door opened. Deb from the diner stood there, then froze when she saw me. Sorry, Pastor. I didn't mean to interrupt. It's fine, Deb. Come in. She walked past me without making eye contact, set a casserole dish on the side table. For the potluck, after service. Thank you, Deb. Eugene smiled at her. Then, louder than necessary, Vern and I were just discussing some marital difficulties. I'm trying to help him see that reconciliation requires humility. Deb glanced at me. Something in her eyes, not sympathy, something else. Discomfort, like I was contagious. She left quickly. Eugene stood. I think it would be best if you took some time away from church. Give Crystal space. Give yourself time to reflect on your behavior. Work on becoming the husband she needs. You're asking me not to come to church? I'm asking you to show some Christian grace, to stop making accusations and start looking at your own heart. He walked to the door, opened it. I'll be praying for you, Vern, for both of you. In the fellowship hall, conversation stopped when I walked through. People didn't look away fast enough. I saw it in their faces, the same thing I'd seen in Deb's eyes. They knew. Eugene had made sure they knew, not the truth, just his version, Crystal's version. Outside, the cold air hit like a slap. I walked to my truck, hands in my pockets. Across the parking lot, I could see them through the fellowship hall windows. Gathered in groups now, talking. Heads leaning close, I climbed into the truck, started the engine, let it warm up while I sat there, watching through the windshield. 38 years in this church. Baptized Billy Ray here. Buried my father here. Every Sunday for 38 years. And now I was the problem. The controlling husband. The paranoid old man who couldn't handle his wife having friends. The service bell rang. People started filing into the sanctuary. I watched them go, watched the parking lot empty. Deb walked past my truck. She looked straight ahead, pretending she didn't see me sitting there. I put the truck in reverse. Drove home to the empty farmhouse, where Crystal's coffee mug still hung on its hook and her gratitude journal still sat on the counter, full of lies she'd written down to make herself believe them. My son thought I was crazy. My pastor thought I was abusive. My church thought I was the villain. And Crystal was somewhere safe. With Derek, spending my father's money while I sat alone in a cold house with 60 days to prove I wasn't losing my mind. I parked in front of the workshop, sat there with the engine running, the dashboard vents blew heat that didn't reach my hands. 41 years of being a father, 38 years of being a husband, and somehow I'd become the enemy without ever leaving my own farm. The locksmith showed up Monday morning at 8, young guy maybe 30 with a company shirt and a toolbox that looked newer than mine. He didn't ask questions, just got to work. I stood in the kitchen, watching him drill out the old deadbolt. The sound was loud in the empty house, metal on metal. When he pulled the old lock free, there was a pale rectangle on the door where the faceplate had been. 38 years of paint built up around it. You want the same brand or something stronger? He asked. Stronger. He installed a new deadbolt, high security cylinder, pick resistant. Then he did the back door, the workshop, the barn. By 10:30, I had 5 new keys on a ring that felt heavier than the old ones. After he left, I walked through the house taking inventory. Marlene had suggested it. Document everything while Crystal's gone. Protect yourself. I opened Crystal's closet. Half empty. She'd taken her good clothes, left the everyday stuff. Her jewelry box was still on the dresser. Costume pieces mostly. Nothing valuable. I photographed it anyway. In the bathroom, her makeup bag was gone. Toothbrush missing from the holder. I found her gratitude journal on the kitchen counter, the expensive one with the leather cover, the kind they sell at the bookstore in town for $40. She'd been writing in it every morning for 2 years. Part of her wellness journey, she'd called it. I flipped through it, page after page of affirmations. I am grateful for abundance. I am worthy of love. I release what no longer serves me. January 10th. I am grateful for new beginnings and the courage to choose myself. January 15th. I release guilt and embrace my authentic path. January 20th. I am worthy of a partner who sees me, who values my growth. I set it down, took photos of the pages, evidence that she'd been planning this, that choosing herself meant stealing and lying. The house was too quiet. I'd lived here my whole life, born in the upstairs bedroom, came back after Vietnam, brought Crystal here as a bride. Now it felt like a museum, everything in its place, but nothing alive. I went to the workshop, 4:30 in the afternoon, but I needed the ritual, needed the motion of something that made sense, the tool chest open smooth, every piece where it should be. I lifted out Dad's big crescent wrench, the one with his initials scratched into the handle, wiped it down with oil, checked the adjustment threads, 23 tools, all accounted for. I photographed each one again, close-ups of the serial numbers, the wear patterns, uploaded everything to Marlene's cloud drive with today's date stamp. The workspace smelled like oil and old wood and cold metal, real smells, honest smells. My phone buzzed. Text from Marlene. Talk to Janet at the bank. We need to meet tomorrow. Bring the journal. I texted back. What did she find? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, just come by at noon. You need to see this in person. The lawyer's office was in the county seat 20 miles east. I'd never needed a lawyer before, never been divorced, never been sued, never been accused of anything. Marlene had made the appointment. You need legal representation, she'd said. This isn't going away on its own. Thomas Garrett was maybe 50, gray at the temples, tie loosened at the collar. His office smelled like coffee and paper. He had the kind of desk that showed he actually worked, files stacked, yellow legal pads covered in notes. I gave him everything. Bank statements, loan documents, signature comparisons, photos of Crystal's journal, screenshots of the spa charges, the whole file box worth of evidence. He reviewed it in silence. 10 minutes of page-turning while I sat across from him and listened to the radiator clank. Finally, he looked up. This is fraud. Textbook forgery, identity theft, misappropriation of marital assets. He tapped the signature comparison. The handwriting analysis alone would be enough, but combined with the timing, the withdrawals, the affair evidence, he leaned back. Mr. Holloway, your wife could face criminal charges. 5 years minimum, possibly more, depending on how the prosecutor wants to play it. I just want my farm protected. We'll file a civil suit immediately. Fraud, theft, breach of fiduciary duty. We'll also petition for an emergency restraining order, preventing her from accessing any joint accounts or the property. He made notes on his legal pad. But understand, this will get ugly. She'll fight back. She'll claim elder abuse, financial manipulation, anything to flip the narrative. She already is. Told our son I'm paranoid. Told the pastor I'm controlling. Garrett nodded. Standard playbook. Discredit the victim before they can mount a defense. He pulled out another form. We're also filing a criminal complaint with the prosecutor's office. That's separate from the civil suit. The prosecutor will decide whether to press charges. He slid a retainer agreement across the desk. $5,000 down. Another $5,000 when we went to trial. I thought about Hal's check, about the 60-day deadline, about Billy Ray thinking I was crazy, and Pastor Eugene asking me to stay away from church. How long will this take? Criminal investigation? 4 to 6 months. Civil suit could go faster if she doesn't contest, but given what you've told me, she'll fight. Could be a year, maybe more. He saw my face. I know that's not what you want to hear, but fraud cases are complex. We need to document everything, build an airtight case. The good news is, we have the evidence. The bad news is, she's had time to build her defense. I signed the retainer agreement, wrote a check from the farm account, the one Crystal didn't have access to anymore. Outside, the sky was gray, February gray, the kind that pressed down on everything. Marlene was waiting in her car. She rolled down the window when I approached. How'd it go? He's filing tomorrow, civil and criminal. She nodded. Janet found something else. Crystal opened that community bank account in October, 4 months before the loan, and there were 2 other deposits, smaller ones, September and November, total of $15,000. From where? Cash deposits, no record of origin. Marlene's hands gripped the steering wheel. Vern, I think this has been going on a lot longer than January. The wind picked up, cold air through the car window. Marlene rolled it up halfway. I'll keep digging, she said, but you need to be ready. This might be worse than you think. The diner was half full Wednesday afternoon, late lunch crowd. I sat in my usual booth, back corner, window view of Main Street. Deb brought coffee without asking, set the cup down harder than necessary. What can I get you? Just the coffee. She walked away. No small talk. No, how you doing, Vern? Same treatment I'd gotten since Sunday. Word traveled fast in Milford. I was halfway through the cup when the door opened. Man in an expensive suit, too expensive for this town. He walked straight to my booth, briefcase in hand. Vernon Holloway? Who's asking? James Pritchard. I represent Crystal Holloway. He sat down across from me without being invited. We need to discuss your harassment of my client. The diner went quiet. Not completely. Forks still scraped plates, coffee still poured. But the conversations dropped to whispers, everyone listening without looking. I haven't contacted her. You changed the locks on her home. You've been making slanderous accusations to mutual acquaintances. You've filed a fraudulent claim with your bank. He pulled papers from his briefcase. My client fears for her safety. We're documenting every instance of your harassment, Mr. Holloway. He said it loud enough that the booth behind us could hear, loud enough that Deb stopped at the coffee station listening. Your client forged my signature on a $120,000 loan. That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof? I have bank documents, signature analysis, county records. Or you have buyer's remorse about a loan you voluntarily applied for. He slid a paper across the table. This is a cease and desist order. You are not to contact Crystal. You are not to discuss her with third parties. You are not to prevent her access to the marital home or any joint assets. My coffee had gone cold. Every eye in the diner was on us now, not even pretending to look away. She stole from me. She's a victim of elder abuse, a woman trying to escape a controlling marriage to a man who's becoming increasingly unstable. He stood, buttoned his jacket. Any further harassment will result in legal action, possibly criminal charges. He walked out. The door chimed. The diner stayed quiet for 5 long seconds. Then the whispers started. I could feel them, even if I couldn't hear the words. Controlling, unstable, elder abuse. Deb came over, topped off my coffee. She still wouldn't meet my eyes. That'll be $2. I left 3 on the table. Walked out to my truck while half the town watched through the diner window. Marlene's house smelled like pot roast and fresh bread. She'd called that morning, said she had something to show me. Her kitchen table was covered in papers, printouts, file folders, yellow legal pads filled with notes. Sit down, she said. Coffee? Please. She poured 2 cups, then spread out the documents. Janet at the bank got me more records. Derek Landis's accounts. She tapped a spreadsheet. He filed for bankruptcy in August 2023. Chapter 7, complete liquidation. I looked at the numbers. $87,000 in credit card debt, $42,000 in personal loans, assets totaling less than $3,000. He's broke. Completely. Lost his condo in the bankruptcy. He's been renting month to month since September. She pulled out another document. Here's where it gets interesting. The first cash deposit into Crystal's community bank account was September 18th, $5,000, 2 weeks after Derek's bankruptcy was finalized. The coffee was too hot. I set it down to cool. Then November 12th, another $10,000 deposit. Then December 28th, the big one, $120,000 from the fraudulent loan. She lined up the bank statements. He needed money. Crystal had access to your assets, and she was already involved with him. How long has this been going on? Marlene pulled out a manila folder. Motel receipts printed from online records. She'd been busy. Comfort Inn, Route 37, August 14th, 2023. Room charged to a credit card in Crystal's name, but the room was a king suite. 2 guests confirmed at check-in. Another receipt. October 3rd, 2023. Same motel, same credit card. She kept laying them out. September 2021, March 21, December 2019. Different motels, different credit cards, but always the same pattern. 2 guests, king suites, charged to Crystal's cards. How many? I asked. 7 receipts total, but these are just the ones I could find through public records. There could be more. She pulled out one more document. This is a speeding ticket. Crystal Holloway, issued July 2019. But look at the vehicle description. 2017 BMW 328i. Crystal drove a 2015 Honda Civic. Whose car? Registered to Marcus Welland. Lives in Fort Wayne. Divorced. I found him on social media. Yoga instructor. Same studio where Derek works now. She pulled up a photo on her phone. This was posted in June 2019. Crystal's tagged in it. The photo showed Crystal at some outdoor yoga event. Marcus had his arm around her shoulders. She's been doing this for years, Marlene said quietly. Different men, same pattern. Derek's just the current one, and he's the first one broke enough to push her into fraud. I stared at the receipts spread across the table. 7 affairs, maybe more. 5 years of lies. Does Billy Ray know? Not yet, but Vern... She hesitated. His girlfriend, Jennifer, she came by the clerk's office yesterday. She saw Crystal at Mullen's pawn shop last week. Crystal was selling something. Jennifer couldn't see what, but she said Crystal looked nervous. Kept checking over her shoulder. My chest went tight. When? March 2nd, last Thursday. 4 days ago, after I changed the locks, after the lawyer filed the restraining order. I need to check something. Sunday morning, 4 a.m. The workshop was dark except for the space heater's orange glow. I'd made coffee, poured it into my thermos. Steam rose in the cold air. This was my time. Had been since Dad died. The hour when the world was quiet and the only thing that mattered was the work in front of you. Clean the tools, oil the moving parts, keep everything in order. I unlocked the tool chest, the Red Craftsman, 1952. Dad had saved for 6 months to buy it, brought it home the same week I was born. I lifted the lid, empty, not just empty, stripped. Every drawer, every compartment, 23 tools gone. Dad's socket set, the torque wrenches, the big channel locks with his initials scratched in the handle, the crescent wrench he'd used to build half this farm. Gone. I stood there, staring into the empty chest. The metal slots where the sockets should have been, the foam cutouts where the wrenches belonged. All empty. Just the outline of what used to be there. My hands didn't shake. They just hung at my sides. Useless. The coffee maker gurgled in the corner. The space heater hummed. Normal sounds. But everything felt wrong, like the air had changed weight. I checked the lock. No damage. No signs of forced entry. She'd had a key. Must have made a copy before I changed the locks. Come in while I was in town, maybe. While I was at the lawyer's office, or meeting with Marlene. Thursday, March 2nd, the day Jennifer saw her at the pawn shop. I pulled out my phone, hands finally working again. Opened the photos from 2 weeks ago, the documentation I'd made in this same spot. Every tool photographed, cataloged, serial numbers recorded. 23 pieces, my father's hands, the tools he'd taught me to use when I was 8 years old. The wrench he'd held when he showed me how to fix the tractor. The socket set he'd used to build Billy Ray's first bicycle. Not just metal, memory made solid, and she'd sold them for cash. I sat down on the shop stool. The cold crept in around the space heater's small circle of warmth. Outside it was still dark, still hours before sunrise. She didn't just steal money, didn't just forge my name or lie to my son or turn my church against me. She stole my Sundays, stole the ritual that connected me to my father, took the one thing that couldn't be replaced with insurance money or bank settlements or lawyer fees. The coffee in my thermos had gone cold. I didn't remember pouring it, didn't remember bringing it to my lips. The empty tool chest sat open in front of me. All those slots, all those spaces where something should be, like looking at a skeleton, the shape of what used to be alive. I closed the lid, locked it, put the key back in Dad's tobacco tin. Then I took a photo of the closed chest. Time-stamped, dated. Evidence for the lawyer, for the police report, for whatever came next. But the photo wouldn't bring them back, wouldn't fill those empty slots or restore what she'd taken. 23 tools, my father's legacy, sold to strangers for whatever the pawn shop would pay. I turned off the space heater. The orange glow died. In the darkness, I could hear my own breathing and nothing else. Pastor Eugene's study smelled the same as always, old books and lemon polish, but this time Marlene sat beside me, her purse in her lap like armor. Eugene looked tired. He'd aged since I last saw him 2 weeks ago, more gray in his hair, deeper lines around his eyes. "Thank you for seeing us," Marlene said. "Of course." He folded his hands on the desk. Pastor posture. "Though I'm not sure what else there is to discuss. Vern knows my position." "Your position was based on incomplete information." Marlene opened her purse, pulled out a file folder. "I have bank records showing Crystal forged Vern's signature on a $120,000 equity loan." I have motel receipts dating back to 2019 showing a pattern of affairs. I have documentation of cash deposits totaling $135,000 in fraudulent funds. She laid it out on his desk, paper by paper, evidence in black and white. Eugene didn't touch it, just looked at the pile growing in front of him. I have a criminal complaint filed with the prosecutor's office, Marlene continued. I have a civil fraud suit, and I have a pawn shop receipt from last Thursday showing Crystal sold Vern's father's tools, family heirlooms, for $427. That made him look up. What? His father's tool collection, 23 pieces, some over 70 years old. She stole them from his workshop and sold them while he was meeting with his lawyer. Marlene's voice stayed level, but there was steel underneath. She didn't do this to escape an abusive marriage, Eugene. She did this because her boyfriend went bankrupt and she needed cash. Eugene picked up the bank statements. Read them slowly. His face didn't change, but something in his shoulders sagged. I didn't know, he said quietly. You didn't ask. Marlene pulled out another document. This is the signature comparison. Left side is Vern's actual signature from his father's estate documents. Right side is the loan application. They don't match. Eugene studied it, set it down, picked up the motel receipts. The radiator hissed. Old building, old heat. Same sound I'd heard in this office for 38 years. She told me he was controlling, Eugene said, that he'd become paranoid since retiring, that she feared for her safety. She lied, Marlene said. To you, to her son, to this entire congregation. And you believed her without checking, without talking to Vern, without asking to see any evidence. Eugene looked at me for the first time. I owe you an apology. You owe him more than that, Marlene said. You humiliated him publicly. You asked him to leave his own church. You turned this congregation against him based on one person's lies. You're right. Eugene stood, walked to the window. Outside, the parking lot was empty. Wednesday afternoon, no services, no meetings, just him and us and the weight of what he'd done. I'll address the congregation this Sunday, set the record straight. Will you tell them about the fraud? I'll tell them I was wrong, that I made assumptions without evidence, that Vern deserves our support, not our judgment. He turned back to us. I'll tell them he's been the victim of a crime, not the perpetrator of abuse. Marlene gathered the papers, put them back in her folder. Billy Ray needs to hear this too. Crystal told him the same lies she told you. I'll call him today. We stood to leave. Eugene walked us to the door, then stopped. The tools, he said. Your father's tools. Is there any way to get them back? The pawn shop sold most of them already. I bought back 2 pieces, that's all that was left. I'm sorry, Vern. Truly. Outside, the March wind cut through my jacket. The sky was gray, but lighter than it had been. Spring trying to push through winter's grip. Marlene walked beside me to the parking lot. That was hard, she said. Yeah. But necessary. I unlocked my truck. He'll tell them Sunday. Will it matter? Some will believe him, some won't. That's how it works. She opened her car door, then paused. Jennifer gave me the pawn shop receipt. Billy Ray's girlfriend. She thinks he should see it. Thinks it might change his mind. Will you give it to him? I think you should. The wind picked up. Cold rain starting, the kind that couldn't decide if it wanted to be snow. March in Indiana, mud season, everything frozen, starting to break apart. I don't know if he'll listen, I said. Only one way to find out. The church was full. Sunday morning, usual crowd, but something felt different. People sat straighter, whispered less, like they knew something was coming. I sat in the back row, Marlene beside me, Hal on the other side. Nobody had asked me to stay away this time. The organ played. Old hymn, one I'd heard 1,000 times. The sound filled the sanctuary, bounced off the high ceiling. Pastor Eugene stepped up to the pulpit. No opening prayer, no welcome. He just stood there, gripping the edges of the wood. I need to speak to you about Vernon Holloway. The sanctuary went silent. Even the organ stopped. 2 weeks ago, I asked Vern to stay away from this church. I told him he needed time to reflect on his behavior. I suggested he was being controlling, paranoid, abusive. Eugene's voice was steady but quiet. I was wrong. Someone coughed. Pews creaked as people shifted. I made assumptions based on one person's story. I didn't ask for evidence. Didn't talk to witnesses. Didn't do what a pastor should do. Seek truth before passing judgment. He looked directly at me. Vern has been the victim of fraud. His wife forged his signature on a loan, stole money from their farm, and committed crimes that are now being prosecuted by the county. And while he was dealing with that, I made it worse by believing lies and turning this congregation against him. Deb sat 3 rows ahead. I saw her shoulders stiffen. I owe Vern an apology, a public one, since my accusations were public. Eugene stepped down from the pulpit, walked to the back of the church, stood in front of me. Brother Vern, I'm sorry. I failed you as your pastor. I failed this church by not seeking truth. I ask your forgiveness. The whole congregation watched, waiting. You're forgiven, I said. Eugene nodded, then turned back to face everyone. Vern and Crystal's marriage is ending. That's a tragedy. But it's ending because of fraud and betrayal, not because Vern did anything wrong. If any of you have treated him poorly because of what I said, because of assumptions you made, I'm asking you to make it right. He walked back to the pulpit, started the service properly, opening prayer, hymn, scripture reading, but I barely heard it. After the benediction, people approached. Not everyone, but enough. Deb first. I'm sorry, Vern. I should have known better. Coffee's on me next time you come in. Tom Brewster from the feed store. Need anything fixed around the farm? You call me. No charge. Martha from the Bible study. I feel terrible. Crystal and I were friends. I thought... She trailed off. I'm sorry. Hal stood beside me through it all. Quiet support. When the crowd thinned, he put a hand on my shoulder. Good sermon, he said. Yeah. We walked out into spring sunshine. First real warmth in weeks. The parking lot smelled like wet pavement and new grass trying to push through gravel. Marlene waited by my truck. Billy Ray's here, she said. In his truck. He wants to talk. I found him parked under the oak tree. Same spot I used to park when I brought him here as a kid. He was sitting in the cab, staring at his steering wheel. I knocked on the window. He jumped, then rolled it down. Dad? Billy Ray. Can I... He gestured to the passenger seat. I climbed in. The truck smelled like fast food and coffee. Work truck smell, honest. I heard the sermon, he said. Yeah. Jennifer showed me something, last night. He pulled a paper from his jacket pocket. Pawn shop receipt. She said Aunt Marlene gave it to her, said I needed to see it. I took the receipt, March 2nd, Mullins Pawn Shop, 23 items, tools, vintage. Total payout, $427. Those were Grandpa's tools, Billy Ray said, his voice cracked. The ones he showed me when I was 8, the wrench with his initials. Yeah. Mom sold them. Yeah. He was quiet for a long time. Outside, cars were leaving, church crowd dispersing, life going on. She called me 2 months ago, Billy Ray said. Told me you were acting paranoid, that you'd been going through her stuff, accusing her of things. She said you were becoming dangerous. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I believed her. I don't know what I thought. That you were getting old. That the farm isolation was getting to you. She's good at lying. I should have known better. Should have asked to see proof. Should have talked to Aunt Marlene, to someone besides just Mom. He looked at me. I'm sorry, Dad. I chose her story over yours without even checking. The tool receipt was still in my hand. $427. That's what they'd given her for 70 years of my father's work. Jennifer told me there's more, Billy Ray said. That it wasn't just one affair, that Mom's been doing this for years. Since 2019 at least. Maybe longer. Jesus. He put his head in his hands. My whole childhood. I remember those trips, those conferences. She was always going somewhere, and you were always here, working. I thought you were the boring one. Thought she was the fun parent who had a life outside the farm. She did have a life outside the farm. Yeah, but not the one I thought. He looked at the receipt again. Can we get them back? Grandpa's tools. Bought back 2 pieces, that's all that was left. Which 2? The crescent wrench with his initials and one of the socket wrenches. Billy Ray nodded slowly. The big crescent, that's the one he used to teach me about torque. Showed me how to tighten the combine bolts without stripping them. I remember. We sat there while the parking lot emptied. Spring sunshine through the windshield. Birds singing in the oak tree overhead. The kind of morning that felt like hope was possible. The courthouse hearing is next week, I said. Tuesday at 10. You don't have to come. I'll be there. You sure? I'm sure. He started the truck. And Dad, after all this is done, after the legal stuff, I want to learn the farm, really learn it. The way Grandpa tried to teach me before I got too cool to listen. Something in my chest loosened, just a little. Sunday mornings, I said. 4 a.m., bring coffee. The courthouse was cold, marble floors, high ceilings, the kind of building designed to make you feel small. Marlene and Billy Ray sat behind me in the gallery, Hal too, and Pastor Eugene, witnesses, support, the things you needed when your life went on trial. Crystal sat at the defendant's table with her lawyer. She'd lost weight, looked older, her expensive perfume couldn't quite hide the smell of desperation. The judge was a woman, maybe 60, Judge Patricia Morrison. She'd been on the bench for 20 years. Mr. Pritchard, your client is charged with forgery, fraud, and theft. How does she plead? Crystal's lawyer stood. Not guilty, Your Honor. We maintain that this was a misunderstanding between spouses regarding jointly held assets. Jointly held assets don't require forged signatures, Counselor. Judge Morrison looked at the documents in front of her. I've reviewed the bank records, the signature analysis, the timeline of events. She looked at Crystal. Mrs. Holloway, did you sign your husband's name to a home equity loan application on December 15th? Crystal's lawyer whispered something to her. Yes, she said quietly. But I thought, yes or no answers, please. Yes. Did you open a bank account in October using your husband's name and social security number without his knowledge? Yes, but yes or no? Yes. Did you withdraw $120,000 from the equity loan and deposit it into that account? Crystal was crying now, soft theatrical tears, the kind that had worked on Billy Ray, on Pastor Eugene, on half the town. Judge Morrison's expression didn't change. Yes or no, Mrs. Holloway? Yes. The judge made a note. The evidence is clear. This court finds the defendant guilty of forgery in the second degree, fraud, and theft. Sentencing will be held in 30 days. She looked at Crystal's lawyer. Your client will surrender her passport and remain in the county pending sentencing. Is Mr. Landis present? No, Your Honor. We've been unable to locate him. Issue a warrant. If he's involved in this fraud, he'll answer for it. Judge Morrison turned to me. Mr. Holloway, the court recognizes you as the victim in this case. The property lien is removed. The fraudulent loan is voided. Your farm is secure. She banged the gavel once. Sharp crack that echoed off marble. Billy Ray's hand gripped my shoulder from behind. Outside, the April sun was warm. Real warmth, not just the promise of it, the kind that meant winter was actually over. Crystal came out 10 minutes later, her lawyer beside her. She saw me standing by the truck, Billy Ray next to me. She stopped, waited. Like she expected me to say something, to yell, to gloat, to give her the satisfaction of my anger. I looked at her. This woman I'd been married to for 38 years. This stranger who'd stolen my father's tools and forged my name and turned my son against me. I didn't say anything, just opened the truck door and climbed in. Billy Ray did the same. We drove away while she stood there on the courthouse steps, watching us go. The sentencing hearing was quick. 30 days after the verdict, same courthouse, same judge. Crystal stood when Judge Morrison entered. Her expensive suit hung looser now, 2 months of consequences showing in her face. Mrs. Holloway, you've been found guilty of forgery, fraud, and theft. Before I impose sentence, do you have anything to say? Crystal's lawyer nodded at her. She'd prepared a statement. I could tell by the way she unfolded the paper, hands shaking just enough to look genuine. Your Honor, I made terrible mistakes. I was confused, lost. I wasn't thinking clearly. Her voice broke on cue. I never meant to hurt anyone. I just wanted... You wanted $120,000. That wasn't yours, Judge Morrison said. You forged documents. You stole family heirlooms. You manipulated your own son. She looked at the papers in front of her. The presentencing report shows no remorse. Your statements to probation focused on blaming your husband for your choices. Crystal's lawyer started to object, but the judge held up her hand. 3 years supervised probation, restitution of $124.27 to be paid at $500 per month, community service, 240 hours, permanent restraining order prohibiting contact with Vernon Holloway or access to any property in his name. Judge Morrison looked directly at Crystal. You're fortunate the prosecutor agreed to probation instead of jail time. One violation, and you'll serve the maximum sentence. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. As for Mr. Derek Landis, a warrant remains active. If he returns to Indiana, he'll face the same charges. She banged the gavel. Court is adjourned. Billy Ray and I walked out together. Marlene waited in the hallway, along with Hal and Pastor Eugene. It's done, Marlene said. Yeah. Derek's warrant went national last week, she added. They found him in Scottsdale. Extradition hearing is next month. I nodded. Didn't really care anymore what happened to Derek. He was Crystal's problem now, not mine. Outside, the spring air smelled like fresh rain and new growth. May, planting season, the time when things that looked dead all winter started coming back. You working today? Billy Ray asked. Fields won't plant themselves. I'll follow you home. Help you get the equipment ready. Sunday morning, 4 a.m. The workshop was still cold, but not the bone-deep cold of January. Spring cold, the kind you could work through. Billy Ray showed up at 4:15, 2 coffees in hand. Sorry I'm late. You're here. That's what matters. I opened the tool chest. The 2 recovered pieces sat in their proper slots. Dad's crescent wrench and the socket wrench. The rest of the spaces were empty. Would always be empty now. But empty wasn't the same as gone. The outline was still there, the memory of what had been. Billy Ray picked up the crescent wrench, tested its weight. I remember Grandpa's hands on this, how he'd adjust it with his thumb while he talked, not even looking at it. Muscle memory. He did that for 60 years. Can you teach me? I handed him the oil can. First we clean, then we oil, then we check the adjustment threads. He worked slowly, carefully, the way you work when you're learning something that matters. I watched his hands, my son's hands, doing what my father's hands had done, what my hands had done every Sunday for 20 years. Marlene knocked on the workshop door at 5. Let herself in with the coffee she always brought. Better coffee than what I made. She set it on the workbench without saying anything, just stood there watching Billy Ray work. He's got his grandfather's hands, she said quietly. Yeah. The 3 of us stood in the workshop while dawn started breaking outside. Gray light through the window, then gold. Spring light, the kind that promised warm soil and new growth and the endless cycle of things dying and coming back. Billy Ray finished with the wrench, set it carefully in its slot. What's next? Next we go check the tractor, make sure she's ready for planting. And after that we plant. Northfield first, then the east section. Should take us 3 days if the weather holds. We walked out into the dawn together. The farmhouse sat quiet in the distance. The fields stretched out brown and ready, waiting for seed. 81 years of my family's work. 81 years of waking before dawn and working the soil and trusting that what you planted would grow. Crystal hadn't taken that. Couldn't take that. The land was still here. Billy Ray was here. The work continued. The tractor started on the second try. Diesel engine catching, then settling into its familiar rhythm. The sound my grandfather heard, my father heard, that I'd heard my whole life. Billy Ray climbed up beside me. Ready? I put the tractor in gear. Yeah, let's go plant something. The tool chest has 21 empty slots now. Used to bother me, seeing all that absence. Now I think maybe that's just how life works. You lose things you can't replace, things that mattered more than money or justice or being right, but you keep the ritual anyway. Every Sunday at 4 a.m., I oil those 2 pieces. Dad's crescent wrench, the socket wrench. Billy Ray's there most mornings now, learning the motion of it, the quiet prayer of maintenance. Took me a while to understand what I actually lost. Wasn't the marriage. That had been dead for years, I just didn't know it. Wasn't the money, though that hurt. Wasn't even most of the tools, though those'll haunt me. What I lost was certainty. The belief that 38 years meant something, that vows were more than words, that the person sleeping next to you was who they said they were. Can't get that back. Wouldn't want to, probably. Certainty makes you soft, makes you trust when you should verify. But I got something else instead. Got my son back. Got Sunday mornings that mean something again. Got dirt under my fingernails and the ache in my back that comes from honest work. Spring came anyway. That's what I tell Billy Ray when he asks if I'm okay. Spring came, like it always does, even after the coldest winter. Even after you think the ground's too frozen to ever thaw. We planted all 80 acres. Corn and soybeans. Same crops my grandfather planted in 1944 when he came back from the Pacific. Same earth, same cycle. Billy Ray asked me last week if I'd ever trust anyone again. I said, I trust the land. Trust that what you plant grows if you tend it right. Trust that morning comes after every long night. Trust him. That's enough. The farm's still here. 82 years now come October. Crystal got 3 years probation in a payment plan. Derek got an extradition order and whatever comes after. Pastor Eugene got a lesson about believing one side of a story. And me, I got peace. Not the kind you expect, not happiness, not closure, not some Hollywood ending where everything's forgiven and everyone learns and grows. Just peace. The kind that comes from knowing you survived, knowing you stood your ground when it mattered, knowing that your father's land is still your father's land and your son's going to inherit it someday, and the work continues whether anyone's watching or not. We're planting again next week. Billy Ray's bringing his girlfriend, Jennifer. She wants to learn the farm too, wants to understand what matters to him. That's how it starts. One Sunday morning, one cup of coffee, one lesson at a time. The empty slots in the tool chest don't look so empty anymore. They just look like space for what comes next.